live experience exploring modern masculinity, emotional resilience, and where we have honest conversations. And so I'm joined today by David Mintz, and he works within the property industry and is the author of Do This First, an estate agent's guide to better mental health. So I'm really excited to dig into this. So I think and also, to say David will be moderating the AIR panel at Unmasked. So I'm really excited to talk to him a little bit more today. We're going to be looking and delving a little bit more into the pressures men carry in professional environments. So vulnerability in industries built around performance and success, and why spaces for honesty really matter more than ever. So David, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So before we dive into all this masculinity and emotional well-being talk, let's just get down and rewind a bit, because I want to find out more about you. So can you tell me a little about who you are, what you do? And I'd really be interested in finding about your journey into the property world.
Okay, so I'm all about property, mostly. And that might be a bit boring because my journey in started really early on. So I think it was the first job that I ever had. It was an after school job when I was like 15 or 16.
Okay.
I had it was a friend of mine who was working, his mum worked at an estate agency.
Okay.
I was in their house one weekend. She was yelling at him because he did not turn up for his job. She said, I got you this job and you're meant to be there at 4:30 every day. And it's a great opportunity. I bet if I offered this to David, he'd be there at 4:30 on Monday. And she meant that as a bit of a joke. But at 4:30 on Monday, David walked through the door and he never left. So that's kind of where I started out. And I think that for me, the more you get to know me, you'll know that I think you and I are probably very similar in this. We like to talk a lot, right? We're communicators.
Communicators, yes.
I think if you're a communicator, you like connecting with people, then I think property is a great industry for you because you can actively use those skills. If you to ask my kids what it is that I do for a living, very often they'll tell you that they just hear me talking an awful lot. And so I think communication or effective communication is really at the key to what we do. Although property is the kind of end product, we're not selling a property off the shelf. You can't walk into a shop and just pick it up and buy it. It's more of a service, and we're there to guide you through it. So that's kind of where I started out.
And you're from the north, I think, right? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm from Manchester.
Born and raised.
It doesn't feel like it today because we've got like I don't know, extreme weather circumstances here where it's very hot. But Manchester's a wet, dark place for most of the year. But
we're really selling it.
But you know what? That actually helps because I think the people here in Manchester are. If you were to sort of look at us and the difference between some of the people you bump into in London, we still make eye contact with people here on the street or on the tube. You very often people will sort of use terms of endearment. So if you go into a shop to buy something, they won't just say that's £5, please. They'll say that's £5, love, or darling, or whatever. And it's a nicer, more friendly environment. And I think that we Mancunians, because maybe our atmosphere has been a little bit sort of like damp and dark, we try to overcome that with humor and with warmth a little bit. So I'm actually hoping that, although I'm not selling Manchester for all that it's worth, the people here are what make it different. Yeah.
Love it. So I actually kind of wanted to ask, I'm just like sweating right now actually in this heat. But one of the other things I really wanted to find out was at what point then did, like in this journey within property, did mental health and emotional well-being become important to you?
I think I think, as with mental health in general, I think that we all have woken up to it too late, almost, or a lot later than we thought. Because when you're in your sort of earlier years, you don't always. There are two things that happen, I think, with mental health. Sometimes the things that go on in your head, you think are only you. It's
Mm,
only you.
mm,
It's a conversation that no one else is hearing in their head. It's literally just your own private conversation with yourself. And so sometimes we don't share that. But now I think what we're opening our eyes to is the fact that we have more in common than we actually think, and that a lot of us are struggling. We need to think of it. And also sometimes in the professional career, it takes time for the effects of your environment to build to a point that it almost it provokes crisis,
mm,
and you respond to that crisis, and then it's a very, very long journey to
mm,
actually getting to the point where you go, right, I understand, I have an issue that I'm not the only person in the world that's got it. Yes, it is personal to me,
mm,
but there are things that I can be done. This is a conversation that can happen more globally with other people within the industry. What's really interesting about mental health journeys within the property industry
mm.
that is perhaps peculiar to other walks of life is that we are maligned a little bit in the world. So estate agents and people that work in property have traditionally a very bad reputation globally. And it's a horrible stereotype because
Right.
some of us are lovely professional people, but
Yes.
but
Agree.
there are obviously people that don't fit into that category. But I think there's something called the Veracity Index, which is published every year,
Okay.
and it's published by Ipsos, so they are a polling institution. They
Yep.
go out there to the members of the public, and they basically say, who are you likely to trust in these professions? And they'll say, they'll give you doctors, solicitors, lawyers, politicians, estate agents, and the politicians and estate agents
Okay.
always feature right at the bottom of this.
I
So,
wonder
so
why that is. But wait a second. Where did that come from? I know that estate agents don't have the greatest, but then does that affect them and their thinking about who they are as people as well? Then is it something?
100%.
Yeah.
It's like being raised as a kid. If you're told that you are bad
Yeah.
and that there's something wrong with you, you carry that with you, and it's part and it affects you. And I think similarly as adults, if you're in an industry
Mm.
where you're told that the members of the public don't value what you do, and that you'll go to parties or you'll meet people and you'll say, I'm an estate agent, and they roll their eyes and they go, oh, we know what you're like,
Yeah.
then it instantly makes you feel almost embarrassed to sort of
Yeah.
admit what it is that you do.
It's
And I
almost like
think
you have to play a role, isn't it? It's almost like you're playing a role that you've been given, and you have to feel like, oh, okay, this is who I am.
completely. And I think either you own it, and you kind of lean into that stereotype. So you are the loud, flashy estate agent with the fancy car and the shiny suit and so
Mm.
on, or that conversation can make you feel quite uncomfortable. And I think you need to justify the value that you add to people. And I think that I came to maybe this conversation late in my life, but I've been very privileged to have lots and lots of conversations with many, many people that work in the property industry. And what I understand is actually, on the whole, we are an industry of people that provide a fabulous service to people. And it's not just a standard service, because we meet people at key moments in their life, and really sort of sliding doors moments where, um, you know, the standard things, they could have been through a bereavement, which has meant that they're selling a property. Maybe it's a happy thing. Maybe they're getting married. Maybe they're having a baby. Maybe they need more space. Maybe they've become unemployed, and they're getting another job in another location. When we're needed as estate agents, we're always needed for a reason. There's normally a key life event behind it.
Okay.
And really for us to value what it is that we do, beyond just the transaction, is to appreciate that we move people through their life and through their life story, and that we can add value. We can either make that process really helpful and meaningful for them, or we can make it extremely painful. Most of us appreciate that it's our job to help and we enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And the great estate agents that I speak to and the people in the property industry that appreciate that that is their role to kind of move people from one chapter of their life to another. They're amazing people, and they're all a little bit like me, very sort of good communicators. They're always quite effervescent and they're out there. And that's good, but you have to realize that there is a mental toll that we take, from how we're perceived, but also the other things that we come across during our professional career. So when we're talking to members of the public and they're telling you parts of their life, you're downloading all and absorbing all of that energy and all that information, and you carry it with you. Now, psychologists get to go and do what they call supervision, which means that once a week they'll check in with another psychologist and say, what a crazy week I've had. This is all the crazy stories that I've had to deal with. And they get to process it. Estate agents don't necessarily get to do that, so they carry it with them. And so therefore, there is a bit of a mental health effect.
Yeah, and I guess it sounds like they're carrying all this pressure to always appear confident, in control. And I'd really be interested in your thoughts on whether the property industry itself can appear pretty success driven. So you were saying before how, we're here to help. They want to help, but there is that other side that you've said about this whole kind of like persona, that it's just success driven from the outside. What pressures do you think then men working in that world are quietly carrying if there's that whole view from the outside?
So I'm going to say two things, and I know our focus is on the pressures that men carry, and I will come to that. Definitely. What I do want to say is that there are an awful lot of women working in our industry that carry the same pressures.
Absolutely.
But particularly when it comes to being success driven, we might even say that sometimes women are under more pressure to be more successful because they feel that they need to compete with their male counterparts, and that's very much something that's always evident. I think there is a tendency and a danger, I think, where you get to a place in your life where you measure how effective you are as a human being. Your contribution to society is in your bank balance, or what car you drive, or what status you hold, or who made this T-shirt. It's Asda, by the way. But you you will you're there to sort of you have to outwardly show that you're successful. And I'll give you for instance, estate agents, the cliche is that they drive flashy cars. There's a reason for it. When I started one of my jobs, my boss turned around to me and he said, we're going to get you a BMW. And I said, I don't need a BMW. And he says, no, you need a BMW, because when you pull up outside somebody's house, they see David in his flashy BMW. They go, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy's successful. This is the one that I want. And I think it's an awfully shallow way to live your life. Constantly comparing yourself on the basis of perhaps material possessions and so on. There is a tendency for men particularly to, and I, without wanting to be too crude about it, I call it willy waving. We have to wave our success in the air and show that it's the biggest. And that's an awful pressure that we put upon ourselves if we judge ourselves in that way. And I think property, more than some industries, and I suppose the banking sector is likely to be the same. You're judged by what you're able to sell. You're judged by what your successes are, but sometimes those successes aren't things that you can necessarily measure in money. Sometimes the most useful things that you'll do, and the more personally successful things that you do, don't add to your bottom line at all. I went into a house years ago, and there was a saying on the wall, and I'm going to see if I can remember this properly, but it was something along the lines of, not everything that counts can be counted, and
Mm,
not everything that can be counted counts. And I love that,
yeah, I love it.
because it basically, that this was on the wall of a very wealthy man's house, so it's
Right.
easy for him to say that. But I like that philosophy of the fact that, you know, you can't take all this success with you when you go.
Yeah.
You can't, sometimes you can't even leave it behind. And so what we have to appreciate is, at the end of the day, you need to take something away that's for you, that isn't measured in the amount of zeros on the end of a transaction.
That's so, so true. I mean, the amount of times I feel and hear that these a lot of men in these kind of high pressure type of roles and jobs, they tie their self-worth to their success. And that can be so misleading. All of a sudden, what happens when that success goes? What happens to their
Yeah,
self-worth? It goes as well. And this is where you get into that rut of, well,
yeah.
who am I? You know?
Your world crumbles very, very quickly, and I think there are several reasons for that, and we could go into that, but briefly, I think that men, and it's changing. It's worth me saying it's definitely changing. So there's progress being made, but as men, if you like, we are the product of our environment, our upbringings,
Yep.
the quiet, you said quiet, societal pressures that are there, what it expects of you to do. And this whole notion, this 1950s outdated notion of what a man is,
Yep.
he's the breadwinner. He comes home, he slams the door. I've had a terrible day. Somebody wearing a pinafore gives you a drink. You sit down, and you're the king of your castle. That's not that's not a modern reality for a man. There are expectations of a man these days that you've got to be beyond just that breadwinner, and your job doesn't stop when you walk through the door. You have to then become whoever it is that you're meant to be at home as well, whether that's a father or a partner, or whichever care, sometimes just a caregiver. And those things are also tremendously important. But there are those, so we are all kind of the product of that environment, and we're still lugging around that luggage
Yeah.
from the 1950s.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. You've given me an amazing opportunity to speak to four amazing guys, each with their own story. And I'm not going to spoil the stories.
It's going to be interesting.
But what I will say is there's a commonality that runs through all of these stories after
Really?
speaking to each of these people. And the commonality is that we have parents that obviously come from a different generation. And their expectations of us and their relationship with us are very different to the relationships we now want to have with our next generation.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
How it's almost this modern man, because 50s, 60s, different time. Our parents grew up, their parents parenting them. And then this new society of men who are really getting to understand a lot more about who they want to be.
Yeah.
And men are kind of craving emotionally that I mean, I'm wondering, maybe are there things, or what are men craving emotionally that they don't know how to ask for? I'm sure there's things now that they're thinking about. Right?
I read an article the other day. There is this kind of there's this sense that men, and it's something that you hear very often. You'll hear it on the radio and TV and all different forms of media, that men don't talk. We don't talk. We don't share. I don't think that's true. I think that we don't talk to people that make us feel insecure sometimes. And I think that, and I read this article, so I'm cheating a little bit because my wife is a psychologist, so I get to sort of read her trade magazines when they come through the door. And the other week I was flicking through one of them, and there was an article in there about how this narrative of men not wanting to talk has to change. They do want to talk, but they need to be dealt with in a different way. They need to be spoken to in a different way.
Right.
And this resonated with me because I know I don't respond well to criticism. Even constructive feedback. It's taken me like 45 years to get to the point where I don't just go, I don't want to deal with this. And I think, to me, we're all sort of just like little boys sometimes, and what little boys respond to really well is, you're trying really hard, you're doing really well, that's really good. Can we have a chat about how we might handle this bit of things differently?
Oh,
Now
interesting.
that's a conversation rather than, no, I'm sorry, but you're the problem and
Yeah.
you need to figure your way out of it. There is a turning point, and I will probably mention this at the event, but there's a turning point in everybody's life, but particularly for men and for me, where you go to your first therapy session ever. So if you get to a point of crisis in your life and you've never spoken to somebody before,
Yeah.
and you get the courage to book that appointment, you have a preconception in your head of what that appointment's going to do for you. So in my head, I
Mm.
was going to be lying on a sofa, and some really nice, benevolent psychologist is going to say, so David, tell me all your problems. And I would say, well, my boss treats me like
Yeah.
this, and my wife makes me feel like that, and my parents did this to me, and I don't have any money, and I'm struggling with this, and I'm struggling with that. And I would expect him to turn around to me and go, you're right. All these other people are the problem. They are your problem. But that doesn't happen. What happens is they listen to you and then they go, you do realize that they're not the problem. It's your reaction to them that is the problem. And you get very angry at that point because you
Yeah.
go, no, you're not listening to me. I'm fine. I'm on my own. I'm the happiest person in the world. It's everybody else that makes
They
me feel
wouldn't be
miserable.
here, right? They wouldn't be there if there was the problem.
So, but I think there's a maturity process that goes with that, and I think that eventually you do actually accept that perhaps sometimes the way that I do see the world and the way that I respond to it could be better. If you spend your entire days having fights with everybody that you meet, but they're all different people, the one common denominator is you, right?
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
we all wake up to that realization at some point. So I think men do carry pressures with them. There is an expectation that they have to match, almost like a societal expectation of what a macho, strong man looks like. That notion of strength is
Mm.
something that is drilled into you from day one, that men aren't meant to be weak. They're not meant to be open with people. That's changing because we now understand that there are many different types of men, and we're just people. And I would hope that as men, one of the biggest things we can take away from all the discussions that we end up having is that we no longer need to play a role. We no longer need to conform to somebody else's expectation of the way that we should be behaving. That you should be able to claim your place in the human race as a person in your own right, with your own personality, and it doesn't matter what your gender is at that point, because we all have the same struggles.
But I think there's also something here about men waiting until crisis point before they opening up, and maybe there's something here that they need to realize that, hey, as soon as we're kind of seeing a slight pattern emerging, don't wait because it could get worse. But I think you're right. There's so much more positive movement in terms of how men approach really wanting to talk these days, and I'm so glad to hear it. And so I'm hoping a lot of men will be at the event to just kind of learn more.
No, I mean, that's why, your event came out of the blue for me. I had a phone call and somebody connected us,
Mm.
and you explained what it was that you were doing, and it's great because first of all, you're a woman, and you appreciate some of these things that men are carrying. But
Yeah.
secondly, it is nice. I think that any sort of initiative, there is a tendency for people to dismiss things as being a bit too woo woo and sort of out there.
Yeah.
And yes, there's a little element of woo-woo to all of this,
Yeah.
but I'm as cynical as anybody else. And if we were going to keep it real for a moment,
Yeah.
any opportunity for us to have decent conversations about the pressures that we all feel that we have, and how we handle them, and how we can actually share that there is a commonality. And I think that's the worst thing with mental health, is that because all mental health conversations start in your head and start between you and yourself, and your brain is your worst enemy. It's a beautiful thing. It helps you get through your life, it helps you
Yeah.
communicate, helps you make decisions, but it's also the worst friend you will ever have,
Yeah.
because the voice that you hear in your head that tells you that you're not good enough, or that you need to be a certain way, or sometimes it fills the gaps in silence. It sometimes sort of says, Chantal's not talking now, and the reason she's not talking is she's thinking XYZ about you.
Yeah.
That's usually completely made up, and it's actually not true at all. So I think opportunities for us to have these conversations and to realize that we all have it in common,
Yeah.
and that we can actually sort of share ways out with it. In the property industry, we've traditionally been really bad at talking about mental health,
Okay.
but now there are a couple of moves. So you mentioned that book, that I've recently written. That's to support a charity that I'm involved with called the Property Mark Trust, and it's a beautiful charity. And a lot of people outside the industry think it shouldn't exist, because it's a charity that's just to support estate agents and their families, but
Right.
it supports them in times of bereavement. It supports them in times of illness. We're actually an industry of very small businesses. So if you get critically ill, if you get cancer, whatever it may be, and you can't run your business,
Yeah.
very often that takes you out of action, and it can mean families literally out on the street. So it's great that there's a charity that supports them, but more than that, we recognize that there's an awful lot of mental strain that people are under, and a lot of the help that we get asked for are people that say, look, I'd love to go and speak to somebody, I need therapy, I need to talk to somebody, but I can't afford it, and the waiting lists are really long. So what can you do? So that's great. And there are other initiatives as well. So I think I
But I
mentioned.
wanted to get back to your book actually,
Yeah,
really quickly, because that's something that I felt. Well, I took a quick look at it. I'd only seen it just earlier today, but what I really liked about it was because the title of it's "Do This First," and on every chapter that you have, in the chapters, by the way, everyone, it's quite short. It's quite a quick read. It's quite easy, simple. I love
yeah,
that about it. Just like giving you facts, giving you information. But every chapter is like, "Do this first." You give you like some whatever that chapter was about, but do this first. And I loved that side of it. And so in the book, Do This First, you talk about the importance of not doing it alone. Now, why do you think so many men, I guess, still struggle to reach for support or meaningful connection?
I, I think that there is that still sort of almost that taboo, or that kind of embarrassment, that if
Yeah.
I turn around to my friend and say, actually, so if you want to know a sort of a classic male conversation, and this always kind of makes the women in my life laugh. I can come off a conversation with one of my male friends, and they'll go, oh, what's happening with their work, and what's happening with this and what with that. You were on the phone, and I said, oh, I didn't ask them that. And they'll say, hang on, you were on the phone to him for half an hour and you didn't get to like how his kids are, or what they're like, because men stick to kind of the headlines. So a typical conversation would be, you're right, mate. Yeah, I'm fine. You're right, mate. Yeah, I'm fine. And that's how we talk to it's extremely rude to tell people how you actually feel. And so if you ask me, am I all right? And I actually say, do you know what? I'm not at the moment. I'm just not feeling myself. I'm struggling. I don't feel like I'm achieving what I need to achieve. And I feel these pressures, or I don't have a sense of direction, whatever it may be.
Yes.
It's a conversation that men tend not to share so much. So all initiatives that you'll see around men and mental health, including your event, is to encourage dialogue, and is to encourage them to open up. So I think there is a sense of embarrassment. There's a sense that if I reach out to you for help, I'm weak.
Yes. And
And
that's so not true.
and,
Oh gosh.
and actually, I think it should be the ultimate sign of strength that you can actually say, today, I'm not the best version of David. I'm the version of David that I can manage.
Yeah.
And do you know what? That's good enough for now.
Yes.
But there are times where I want to be better than that. And that's also all right. So I think welcoming those and encouraging those conversations is at the heart of every kind of men's mental health movement that you see.
Yep,
So
that's
yeah,
exactly what I was going to say, a movement. And I don't say this very often, but actually I think it's appropriate here, my why of why I'm actually doing this event. And it just makes me emotional. I'm such an emotional person anyways, but my why was I've had a very good friend of mine. So there's two reasons why. This one was a very good friend of mine back in 2014, 2015, had a lot of emotional struggles, had very much low self-esteem, but had also tried to commit suicide several times in their life. And then we became friends. They would tell me about what they were going through. And it was really difficult for me to say, to kind of give them advice. As a woman, they're a man, they've gone through their stuff. And me saying, oh, well, talk to someone. They've gone through that over years and years, and it just never helped.
yeah.
Didn't know what else to do or where else to signpost them, you know. And in 2015, my friend committed suicide, and he succeeded this time. And it was just devastating. And it was, for me, something that I didn't know how to react to. I thought, gosh, if only. And I didn't blame myself, but I also said, you know what? If only I could have helped a lot better. And for me, this kind of event, even just the ThriveWell Hub, what I'm working on, it's self-care that you find that meets you where you're at, that you do the work that you need and you find what you can. And this event is for men to really tap into the conversations that we're going to be having. They don't have to say anything, but just to listen, to learn, to be there, to be around, and to know that there's going to be some men's groups there that are going to be part of the marketplace that they can tap into after this event. My whole goal is people find the self-care they need, persons that they need at this event that they can listen to, talk to. That's the goal.
It's so interesting what you say, because I think that there is, if you enter any conversation, any arena that deals with men's mental health, that conversation about suicide is ever present. And I'm not saying that women don't experience the same urges in any way, but there is a interesting short circuit in men's brains where we go, I've got a problem. I don't think I can solve this.
Yeah.
Therefore, ... my net worth in life, or my worth in this world is diminished, and I want out because that is the only thing that I can do. I don't deserve anything else. And that is the short circuit that happens all too often with men. Now, the narrative around suicide and it being a choice and so on, it's changing. We're trying to be kinder to ourselves. But I think we all appreciate that there are times where an additional conversation can change the outcome. And somebody realizing that they're not on their own can change the outcome. And maybe even somebody just realizing that actually assessing your self-worth in this world in that way is just unhealthy. And that if you go and you speak to the families of anybody that's lost anyone, and you ask them kind of, what is it about David that you're missing? They ain't gonna say, well, it's his money and his job and all the things he used to tell us when he came home from work. It'll be something else. And that's what you need to open your eyes to. That actually the way that you see yourself sometimes, and that constant pressure to constantly evaluate yourself based on your almost like that monetary value in life, is not what defines you. And certainly the people that love you and appreciate things about you, it'll be other things. It will be the way that you talk to them, the way that you make them feel. You may make somebody laugh that nobody else can make laugh. You know, these are the things that you'll take away with you. And then you'll realize, actually, that short circuit isn't something that I need to run right now.
And I love that. I love what you've just said about how men should be thinking about themselves or self-worth differently, in kind of understanding who they are from a different perspective, not just what their brain or that kind of gremlin on their shoulder is telling them. And so at Unmasked, you're going to be moderating the Earth panel, which I'm excited for. And I don't want you to give anything away, but what does Earth, I guess, represent to you, whether it's emotionally or psychologically? What psychologically?
So we talk. It's interesting because we talk about Earth, and what is the Earth? It's a massive rock floating in space, right?
Yeah.
And we're lucky we have the space to float in, but rocks in general are heavy.
Yeah.
And it is drummed into us that we need to be a rock for somebody else, that we need to be a tower of strength for someone else.
Yeah.
And I think therefore that in itself carries its own pressures. Now you will, if you come along to the event, and I would strongly encourage everybody to do so, you will learn things, because you will hear stories, and you'll hear some powerful stories, because all the men on my panel have each got a completely different story to tell with a completely different aspect of their life. But the commonality is, yes, there are pressures that they came to the table with already. There are expectations of them. And, for instance, and I just to sort of shine a light a little bit on one of the stories, there's a chap that had to support his family and his loved ones through times of illness. Now, in that space, men function on autopilot because we know there's a job that we need to do. We need to look after people. We need to go to and from a hospital. We need to support them. We need to make sure they're okay. Now, what happens when everybody comes out of hospital and hopefully they start to recover? You realize that role that you were playing for 12 months, 6 months, however long it was, that acting gig is up. And you now need to redefine yourself in the world, and your wall, everything just comes crumbling down on you, because that version of the rock that you were meant to be is no longer relevant. Wow. So you start to question then, what is your relevance, and who are you going to be next to rock to? And sometimes the answer to that is, you don't need to be a rock to anybody. Just chill out and just wait.
I love that.
Wait for life to throw the next challenge at you, because that's the one thing that you can always rely on. Something will come at you at some point.
It's life, isn't it? That's incredible. I mean, I'm excited to hear more about, because I don't even know. I know you've had these private conversations, but I don't even know what's going to be said. I'm so excited to hear everything that's going to happen and take place on this day. And gosh, I mean, that our time is up. I think we've run overtime, but you've been amazing. And thank you, David.
My pleasure. Really looking forward to being a part of it. And I just want to express my gratitude on behalf of all the people that I've spoken to about this, for you putting on this event, because I think that there needs to be more said and more done. So, yeah.
Listen, I want this event to be amazing for anyone to know that there's going to be an annual event that they can come to, chill, relax, hear people, think about things, get a spark about their life back again, get a reset, get that resilience back, whether it's annually or not. But yeah, that's my goal from all of this in years to come, but we'll see. This episode is part of that journey toward Unmasked, everyone. And so it's just bringing together powerful conversations, I think, a lot of lived experience. We're going to be having expert insight. And so, and it's just around what men, I guess, are carrying silently, just as how we've been talking today, and what becomes possible, I guess, when those conversations are finally given a space. So if this conversation resonated with you, everyone out there, share it with someone who may need it. And if you want to continue these conversations in person, we'd love to see you at Unmasked. So thank you for listening to Self-Care in the City. And we hope to see you 13th of June at Republic. And you can find everything on my website, www.thethrivewellhub.com, to find tickets to Unmasked. Take care and see you next time. Bye for now.